So our traditional view of leadership, there's sort of this comfortable, in the or traditional authoritarian style of leadership, there's this equilibrium of that we expect from our leaders to be protected, we expect them to give us direction, we expect them to keep order. You'll see this a little bit with regimes that have, like dictators, that as long as they keep order, as long as people have enough to eat, they'll let the leader get away with a lot as far as oppression and things. So power and trust is invested in a leader who gives us that kind of feeling of safeness and stability. The thing with adaptive challenges, we are not going to be able to, we're going to be in the chaos together. We're not going to be able to promise order. We're not going to be able to promise direction because we're going to be figuring out together. And we can't protect people from the discomfort of change. So we are not going to have any of those things to help support our leadership. So yeah, adaptive challenges are messy. We're going to be in the puddle splashing around with everyone else. We're not going to be able to provide that kind of clear solution that'll make people comfortable. So it's this idea that there's no one right answer. The complexity of the problem, there just isn't. We have to figure that out together. We have to really look at risk versus reward. So we have to be strategic about what kind of experiments we try. We talk about low risk, high learning experiments. So to do something, I think sometimes when people change service times in the congregation, I know that Kent's struggling with that, where we can't get the balance for children's programs and adult attendance quite right, so we keep shifting the service 15 minutes in different directions, seeing if that'll help with the how many people show up at each service. It's really weighted toward one or the other depending on the time. Again, the leader doesn't impose a solution, it bubbles up from the dialogue between the participants. Everyone learns from one another. And they get more balcony view. I'll talk about that in a minute. But if you're listening to other people, you get other points of view, so you can see the problem with someone else's perspective, and that might help spark your own creativity about how to deal with the problem. And in order for the solution to emerge, everyone has to be willing to adapt themselves to whatever the final solution is. So the idea that someone's going to get their way in this is a concept we have to just let go of. It's not about winners and losers. It's about finding something that really addresses the challenge.
Just quickly on
yes.
Winners and losers, people like the Bruderhof and the Amish folks, they have continued all these years because instead of majority rule, they have consensus.
Mm-hmm.
And we still play this game of democracy and majority rule with one vote. Somehow I'd like to see our congregations move much more towards consensus, because that's the only way you're going to stay organically galvanized on target. Yeah,
I think the aspect of consensus, which is having everybody to have ownership of the final decision, is good. The only problem with consensus is it can perpetuate the homeostasis of the system. So
the lowest common denominator.
Right, or where the anxiety is to help. If someone has a high level of anxiety around the change, and that's preventing the change from going forward, then you'll die, depending on what the challenge is. But
so majority rule is kind of a prophetic visionary. I mean,
it can be.
Sometimes it's even just a plurality that has the vision that carries the rest of the congregation,
right.
If they risk.
Yeah, a plurality is I think having the 70% is a really good. And again, as leaders, I would never I learned this one the hard way. I would never go into a congregational meeting where I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. I mean, you want to have enough focus groups so you really have a sense that you have a large, the outstanding majority is on board and excited more or less about the change, and that the dissenters feel heard. Because even if they, you know, as long as they feel heard and they're high-functioning individuals, you know, but then that's so I don't know that perfect consensus is good.
No, and the Harrisburg Church, when they decided to buy the church downtown, it was a minority that made that decision, but it was the present minority that came to the congregational meeting, and they decided to risk. So.
Yeah, so that's something, it's making that leap.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, the thing with that, I mean, that's not a low risk, high learning. That was definitely a high risk decision that they made. And, you know, those can work too. But if you can find low risk, high learning things, those are the ways you want to approach the challenge. So, I mean, in my own work, I'm trying to work with technology and how do I deliver on-demand stuff to leaders like you so you can sit in your jammies on Saturday morning and drink your coffee and watch a video, right? And you know, there's a lot of stuff that I've done that I just have to toss out because it really wasn't working. But you know, it's still I learned something from that, so that's good. So I'm going to go back to this adaptive learning curve that.